and letting them do their own emotional labor, I would immediately take that on. And myself as well, I wouldn't even recognize that I was angry. I would immediately go into, well, this is okay. We can try to make it work anyway, and go into kind of ameliorating the situation and problem solving. And then sometimes I wouldn't realize that a boundary had been crossed for me, or that a violation had happened, and that I was angry for days after. So something I've been working with recently is actually integrating anger more completely into the the paradigm of wholeness. And it really wasn't something that I chose, but it's definitely something that kind of came up for me. You know, and it came up for me during a meditation retreat, but not in the way that one would think. So in a meditation retreat that I went to recently, and I do these silent meditation retreats called Vipassana. And in a recent meditation retreat, I was noticing that I would continually just find myself slouching. So I would just be sitting, and then suddenly I would be slouching, and I would be sitting, and I'd be slouching. And I was like, and I wouldn't notice the moment that I decided to slouch. So I went and spoke to the teacher, and I was like, okay, I find myself slouching all the time. And then he said, well, are you in pain? And I said, not that I'm aware of. Like, I don't really feel any pain. I just notice I'm slouching, and then I straighten up. And then he said, well, if it's very difficult, you should try to lie down. And I was like, I don't really think it's that. And I realized that in the meditation retreat, the cushion that I was sitting on was very cushy. And it kind of gave me the feeling of like being on the couch. And so I would like kind of chill. And so I shared that with the teacher, and he said, what do you normally sit on at home? And I said, a very, very thin cushion on the floor, just kind of almost like a little bit thicker, almost like a towel. I just, and so I'm used to sitting on a very flat, hard surface. And so to sit on like a plush carpeted floor with a cushion, I just immediately wanted to like chill,
Right.
And so he said to me, well, why don't you try to just sit on the floor without a cushion? And I was like, oh, okay. So I'll make it more like what I'm used to, because I don't normally do that in my home seated practice. So in the next long sit, I did that, and I removed the cushion. And then I found out that as I was sitting there, I noticed, so I felt like it happened. I slouched a little, then I picked it right back up, and I was like, okay. And then I had this thought, you need to find the moment before you slouch. You need to find that. You need to stay hyper vigilant and super present, and you need to feel, what is it that you're slouching? Because this is a reaction to something. It's a reaction to something that you're not, like, I'm talking to myself, it's a reaction to something that I wasn't cognizant of. So this is like the deepest type of samskara, right? The deepest type of behavioral pattern. It's something that's happening without you being aware of it happening. I wasn't even aware of the stimulus. I wasn't even aware of why I was slouching. I didn't even think there was a slouching. It was just suddenly I would find myself slouching. So then I had this thought, okay, now I'm on the floor. I need to be hyper aware and hyper vigilant. I need to be over present. I need to wake up, literally wake up. And so I sat there and I'm like, okay, you do not move. You do not move. You stay present with the technique. You do not move. Don't move. Don't move. Stay with the technique. And then snap, it happened. There was pain. And it was this deep pain around like my right hip area, like not in the joint, but kind of just in the whole diffuse area of the hip. Not I couldn't like identify it as, oh, it's the iliopsoas. Oh, it's the hamstring. Because if I could have done that, it would have been, as a yogi, it would have been extremely easy to just be like, okay, I feel that muscle, let it be there. But it was the whole area from kind of like my navel down to the middle of my right thigh, and just included the whole region. And it just was like, it started off as kind of a dull ache, and I was like, oh, interesting. And then it started to turn into fire and heat, and it was just like excruciating. And I was like, oh, I was avoiding this, And I sat through it, and I didn't move, and it got worse and worse and worse. It did not dissipate. It just sat there and got worse and worse and worse. And then at the very, very end of the sit, it dissipated. So it was just sort of like burning for nearly an hour. And then I made the decision to sit through it, and then it dissipated towards the end. And I will say, after the next sit, I went back to the cushion. I felt like this was a bad move to sit on the floor. It wasn't. It helped me see something, but I was like, I'm going to take that cushy thing again.
That's good.
And then, I did that, and I just sort of, I realized it, and I kind of got this feeling like that there was liberation, there was freedom in sitting with my pain. Now, here's the thing that's interesting is that happened, and I was feeling sort of very, very immersed in kind of a meditative state of and a quality of joy and presence that included the pain, but I hadn't seen the pattern in my life. Right.
Okay.
It was just, I was just like, okay, well, that was what it is. And then a few months later, after the meditation retreat, then the anger started to come up. I started to, I became triggered in a situation where a friend of mine got angry, and instead of, I immediately went into that pattern of trying to process her emotional labor and immediately trying to make it okay. But suddenly it wasn't okay with me anymore. I felt how it felt in my body and how it wasn't okay. And then I went and worked with my therapist and went and worked with an energy healer and continued my sitting practice and did all of the spiritual development work that I do to complement kind of the inner journey. And then I realized the correlation. This was the pattern. Oh. This was the pattern. This was it. Because I didn't know all that about myself in relation to anger. Mm-hmm. I realized this was it. This was the fiery burning. This is the fiery burning sensation that I have an automated response to. And my automated response is trying to make it comfortable. So I'm uncomfortable with other people's anger. So what do? I try to make their anger go away. And then I don't even feel my own anger. I immediately try to move away from it. And it's such a subconscious pattern related to my early childhood trauma, so that I don't even know it's there. And then it was like, because I was strong enough to face in the meditation retreat, then when that pattern was triggered in my life, I was unable to revert to the previous status quo. I needed to shift my life actions as well. So then I had to do all the emotional process work and employ all the tools of traditional psychotherapy. I do dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT or CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, as well as working with, my spiritual advisors and doing all of that kind of personal development growth to really institute a new pattern in how I show up and act in the world, all related to changing the pattern of my response to pain, recognizing a deeply seated samskara, a deeply seated behavioral pattern that was preventing me from experiencing complete wholeness.
Yeah. So it just rings of that. With awareness comes some responsibility, some accountability, it's like our bodies are asking for change. Mm-hmm. Like, here's something. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
And you dug deep, like you tend to do, which is really cool.
Yeah.
That's shifting gears a little bit. You do a lot of work within yourself and the community. I'm curious how you met Tim and how you guys came together and started the Miami life and because when we work through this stuff, when we have a partner, there's a parallel track, but then there's standing strong alone. I feel like how is that part of your life interwoven with all this journey?
Well, I feel like because Tim and I met in the yoga world, we shared the spiritual journey from the beginning,
Oh, Mysore. Yeah,
we met in Trivandrum, which is near Kovalam Beach, in Kerala. We were on the same airplane, and I was connecting I bought this round the world plane ticket, and I was sort of on this personal growth journey, and I'd connected through Kuwait City, and he was coming from Copenhagen, and he was connecting through Kuwait City. We were the only two Westerners on the airplane, and so we met, in the airport. Actually, not in the airplane. I have a wonderful skill of being able to sleep on airplanes.
Okay.
So as soon as the airplane takes off, I almost have sort of a Pavlovian response. I immediately, it's done for me. It's time to sleep, and I can sleep and sleep. So we landed, and then I saw Tim when he had somehow gotten to the baggage claim before I did, and he was coming out of the baggage claim, and I was walking in, and I said, "Hey, are you here doing that yoga thing?" And he said, "Yes." And then I said, "Do you want to share a taxi?" And then kind of that was the beginning. And then so we share yoga. So we very much know what it means to be, triggered from the practice, to have stuff come up, to work through injuries, to work through emotionality, to have different patterns come up. And, he's very much been with me in each step of the journey. And I'm so grateful for that, because if I wasn't with someone who was as committed to growth and could kind of recognize growth, emotional growth, spiritual growth, I think that I would have outgrown the relationship. But he's been someone, he's changed as well and has grown in his own way as well. And in many ways, he's been with me through all of the constant, evolution of our consciousness and of our relationship. And that's been extremely important because I've changed a lot. My level of consciousness, my presence has shifted. And there are some people that, maybe I haven't seen them for a while, or they don't grow. And so what I noticed that for me, sometimes it can be very difficult actually to keep the same group of friends, because I feel I'm constantly shifting. I'm constantly in a different space, in a different vibration onto a new thing. And then there are people that are with me for a part of the journey, but then, I shift and evolve and I'm into something else. And then there's people that I'd shared so much with, and it's not that I don't want to talk to them anymore. It's just that it shifts. And so it's actually been quite difficult for me to stay, I would say, with like a same group of friends for a period of time. But Tim has been able to be with me through the ups and downs, and I would even say kind of quantum leaps in personal growth and spiritual development.
Very cool. And that you were originally from Miami. Yeah. So that's nice that you got to have that home and community. Yeah. Where things started for you. And the so I've heard you say, and or I've seen posts on social media about this business of making people really truly happy. Where did that come about, and how's that play out?
Well, I think, first of all, they do so many things, right? So Tim and I founded Miami Life Center. So we're studio owners, and our studio's been there for, like 12 years. And that's been really, really meaningful. And then I'm an author. So I've written a bunch of books. I'm working on another one and constantly coming up with new, like projects and things like that. I founded Omstars, which I love because it gives me an avenue to do, online videos and to be really creative of telling the story of yoga. So in Omstars, we do more than just instructional videos. We also have, yoga related lifestyle content, and kind of, where what we seek to really be is kind of like Netflix for yogis, so that we have content that speaks to the yoga lifestyle, to the yogi mindset that's beyond just class content. Not that class content is not valuable. It really, really is. It's just that we want to really provide that full experience. So for me, one of the hardest questions that I ever get asked is, what do you do? Because I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm an author, I'm a yoga teacher, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a studio owner, I'm a student of yoga, I'm a spiritual seeker. I don't know, And I've been like thinking about it. I was like, you know what? Like all of these things that I do, why do I do them all? I want to bring people into a state of wholeness, into a state of happiness, into a state of joy. Because if you look around, one of the things that you really see is happy people make a happy space. If happy people that are truly, genuinely happy, then they spread happiness around. People that are miserable, they spread misery around. They're miserable, then they make miserable, short-sighted decisions, selfish decisions, instant gratification-based decisions that make both their world and the world at large a more unhappy place, and they generate more misery. How can you make the world so how can you make the world a happier place? Well, some people pick up their baton and then they go out and, they try to change the world. Let's change this government structure, and let's, do a protest over here and these kinds of things. And I tried that, and it didn't work for me, and so not that I'm against that. I feel we need that. We need those strong, powerful voices of activism in the world. But for me, I feel genuinely like the way I can help people is through compassion. I can understand, hey, you're suffering, and I can show you the way out of suffering. Do you want to get really happy? So I can kind of see myself saying, I'm in the business of making people really, really happy. That's my contribution to making the world a better place. Because no matter where you are, whether you're a world leader or whether you're a student or whether you're a doctor or a teacher or a lawyer or an Uber driver or a barista or a bartender, if you're happy, truly happy, that happiness is going to radiate to every single human interaction you have. And you're going to be able to check out in the grocery store, and your happiness is going to leave a little gift with the cashier in the checkout line. And when you pass through the toll and you give your, dollar to pass through the toll to the toll attendant, you're going to leave a little gift of happiness with them. And that can change the world. So I feel that this is a really, really powerful thing, and that happy people make better decisions, that happy people are truly happy. Not wearing the badge of happiness,
right.
Because when we hear happy, we think happy, happy all the time. No. Happy as in the sense of happiness and joy beyond needing a positive outcome all the time. Happiness that's not predicated on good outcomes. Happiness that includes the grief, that includes the tragedy, that includes the loss, that's able again to weather those emotional storms that come up and down. So I don't know, maybe I feel like I want to start saying, you know, I'm a spiritual development teacher, or I'm a happiness teacher or something like that.
Yeah, I love that. And it's very much the opposite of what we tend to do, or like I know I've done in the past, is like the spiritual bypass.
Right.
And you alluded to that earlier, of like, just let it go, or just, you know, I'm a yogi, I'm going to be peaceful. And it sounds like this genuine happiness that you wish to spread and share in the world. It's an energy that you can, you know, send out